Hello, everyone. Good morning. I hope your day is going well. Today, I would like to talk about a very passionate topic that I am very fortunate to give today with CalWorkSafety. I love doing new hire orientation. It was one of my good feel goods for being an HR manager, and I would try and tailor it as close to the company's culture and mission statement. So let's go ahead and begin, and let me show you some best practices that I've used and that I've learned throughout my career. So today's agenda is going to consist of the recruiting process, and we'll go over the bullet points. Is this a new position or a replacement? We'll talk about the job description and a requisition approval, posting internally and externally. We'll talk about interviewing of the selection process. Then we're going to talk about engagement. This is a very important part of the recruiting and selection process, because we're going to talk about having an offer letter if you do post-drug testing, and also verifying, which is basically the verification that they work in the United States, or that they have the ability to work in the United States. And also you're going to want to do some reference checking. Then we'll get into the new hire orientation, which again, I'm going to say it's my passion. We're going to talk about a storyline, if you have one for your company, any goals or mission statements. We'll talk about safety, which is very much a part of the new hire orientation, the illness injury prevention plan, and then the required documentations that you need for federal and state. And also don't forget, don't leave the employee alone on their first day. I always like this touch of taking them to lunch, or having the hiring manager prepare something for lunch. And also you'll want to follow up with the employee. Okay, so let's begin. Why are we recruiting? That is a great question. Why are we recruiting? Your hiring manager needs to be challenged a bit in the fact that, are we replacing someone, or is this a new position? You'll want to ask him or her if you can help with the job description. Job descriptions are very important, and I'll tell you why in a minute on the next slide. But the job description is basically your format, okay? Your painting of what this position is going to look like and how you're going to hire. The other best practice that I felt was necessary was a requisition form. The requisition form helps the hiring manager understand what's required of the job, so you can post an accurate an ad, and also what the salary range is and the approvals that we need. Sometimes these hiring managers hire through what I call the back door, and that's always been unfavorable when the owner will ask me, how did we find this guy? Well, he came through, one of the managers. It's unacceptable. There should be a formality to this. So make sure that the formalization is well known for the hiring manager. Also, one thing that might be overseen is the grassroots and the opportunity to find someone from within. You always want to know if there's someone that could have a mentor that perhaps could fill this position. They know the product, they know how it's sold, they know how it's made. So always take a look internally, and it also creates great morale for your organization. And do we want the same job description? That's the challenge you ask for the hiring manager. Believe me, if you have a job description where an employee has been there from 3 to 5 years, chances are that it's outdated. And so perhaps you want to have this opportunity to add more experience or more responsibilities, or take away those obsolete job responsibilities that are no longer important. And then who will interview? Who will make the decision? Lately, I've seen that many employers would like maybe 2 or 3 individuals to go ahead and interview, and that's fine. You could also do a panel interview, or you could do other types of interviews, which I have a slide for and I'll talk about in a minute. And do you want to add more experience, education? Do you want to take a look at that? Is it required? Is it a higher level? Or are certifications also a remedy to find someone that maybe doesn't have the education but has the certification and experience? So that sometimes outweighs it. And do we want to reach out to an agency? Let's face it, sometimes some jobs out there are really hard to fill. So that's when you want the authorization to see if you could go out to an agency. I'm getting Robert Half in mind, or Apple One. They specialize in certain niches of positions. So let's talk about the job description. I want to remind you that the job description is a legal document. It is presented in court as an exhibit. So you'll always want to make sure that it is accurate, that it is updated, and you'll want to try and do this as often as the job changes. So all of our job descriptions will require a date, and I would recommend that you keep the revision dates as well, because that shows that the position has evolved. The title of the position is very important, who it reports to. It doesn't necessarily need to have a name, it could be a title. The department is another very important key, because many departments have different labor wages that need to go into it. Whether your business is direct or indirect labor, there are certain buckets that finance puts these dollars in, not only their wages, but any type of benefits. So you'll want to work with finance on that. The summary of responsibilities. This is basically a paragraph. This paragraph will probably be part of your ad, if not most of it. And so you'll want to give them a good picture of what the job responsibilities is going to be. Then you'll put some bullet points. You'll detail the duties, be clear, be concise, what the requirements are, length of service, any type of education, certifications, and also if there's any languages that would help the company. Perhaps the company does a lot of work in China or Mexico, and so a second language would be excellent for this position. Physical requirements. Some of the companies that I've worked for have had a two-story, so it's not required to have an elevator. So you'll want to make sure that in the job description, they'll be able to walk upstairs, they'll be able to lift a certain amount of pounds, or if it's a machinery or a production, you'll want to make sure that you add whether those physical demands will be to kneel or to crawl in certain spaces, and you'll want to be specific. I also have an analysis that I'll show you in the slides to come. And then the catch-all. I love this one. The catch-all is other duties as required by supervisors, because you don't know if there's other duties that isn't in the job description. And that could be maybe picking up donuts on Friday, or it could be ordering flowers, or it could be, picking up a certain part at Home Depot, etc. So other duties as required by supervisor is a catch-all phrase that I like to use in my job descriptions. So let's take a better look at a job description. Here's some example key points. I didn't talk about exempt or non-exempt, as you'll see. And I point that out because that is very important to understand whether the position qualifies for exempt, and also whether it's non-exempt, which in other words, it's an hourly position. So you'll want to make sure that you have that. And the job summary is basically that paragraph I was talking to you about. This is where all of those bullet points on duties, experience, responsibilities, you're going to want to have a good paragraph to summarize that. If this is a position of supervisory or manager, you'll want to make sure that they understand how many direct reports they have, okay? And then the bottom of this template for a job description is the knowledge and the skills or experience. Does it require a degree? Does it require, or will that degree, excuse me, substitute for experience? If they have enough experience, maybe that will balance it. Also, the minimum experience required. And the reason why I say that is because perhaps they don't need um, tons of experience. Maybe it's a learning position, but if it's a position that you do require at least 5 or 10 years experience, then please make sure to add that, because that'll weed out anyone that is just trying to get in the door with no experience. And then the skills required. This is an area where you're going to want to make sure that you're specific on what the skills that are required are, whether it be in production, a CNC machinist, or if in a supervisory position, they've got at least 2 or 3 years of supervisory experience, maybe some certain type of training that you're requiring for them to have, or certification. So you'll want to make sure that you have that information in there. And let the job description, you'll need to let them know if they have any financial responsibilities. Maybe they're and also any equipment that they may be responsible for. You'll also put on the bottom what the supervisory responsibility would be if this is a supervisor or manager position. Okay, so this is the part I really wanted to show you. You know, the physical requirements of the job, I encourage you to really take a look at your job descriptions and complete a physical requirement. We have these forms and templates available at CalWorks, excuse me, Safety and HR. So if you need a template, please let us know. The reason why a job description is so important is because more and more it's being included for a work-related injury for your industrial clinic, and also for medical leave of absences. If an employee is ready to return to work, the doctor could really use this job description on the physical demands of the job. So just keep that in mind, okay? I think it's a very important tool that they could use. You're going to want to describe what the work environment is. Is it dusty, uneven walkways, strong chemical odors? So, let them know visually what they're looking at when they come into the job. You're going to want to describe any equipment such as hand power tools or drills, maybe electronic staple guns. Is there any saws? Mostly this is for production, but you could use it for the office as well. And are they going to be required to do any lifting? Usually it's up to 50 pounds. Will they do any pushing, any pulling, any sitting? That would be required for just about any position, whether it's admin or production. This is something that will help you to understand what the position and the physical demands requires. And I really like it. There's a legend on the left that shows what the box to mark would be. And quite honestly, if you haven't done an analysis of the physical demands, you really don't know what it is that they do. You'll always want the hiring manager to help you with this, or have them do it and you review it as well. This will give the frequency, the amount of hours and time that they spent in lifting, in pushing, in driving, or other ones like keyboard or fine dexterity. Also the twisting and the turning. This is exactly, as I mentioned before, what the work-related injury treating doctor would need. And also if they return to work based on a medical leave, this would help the doctor to understand whether or not there'll be any limitations, okay? All right, so let's talk about the requisition form. You may be a small company, or you may be a larger company with 50 or more. But the requisition form is a formality, and it is a best practice. It has your authorization, it has your dates, it has all the information you need so that you can keep this. Usually I would keep it in a binder, and it's great for analyzing look back in turnover of positions or positions that are obsolete. Maintain the documentation of hiring requisitions for purposes of authorization, first of all, and it's a metrics, as I mentioned, on the look back, so that you could analyze the positions of higher turnover. It's also good for EEO filing. If you're a company with 100 or more, it's required that you file an EEO-1. And also to put the accurate codes. Whether you're not EEO-1 compliant and you're not required, it's good for you to know what EEO codes are because those are employee classifications. And you can see that on www.eeoc.gov if you're curious. And then remember to keep finance informed. We talked about that for budgetary purposes. Do something simple, do it on Word, the date, the position, time to fill. That's a term that we use, and it means how long of a time we have before the hiring manager really needs someone in this position. A couple weeks is the norm because someone's maybe leaving and they want that someone to be able to replace or retrain, excuse me, the replacement. The EEO codes, just to let you know, are coded A through J, and it starts with A being the executive and it goes down. You'll want the hiring manager, again, not necessarily the name, but you do want the title. And exempt or non-exempt position, we talked about that. You want to make sure it meets the exempt threshold if it is an exempt, and you'd have to do a testing on the exempt. Salary range, I always put the salary range as an hourly amount because this is a cost that could be better mitigated and calculated for expenses at an hourly rate. So I would always use the hourly rate. And of course, you're going to want those signatures. You're going to want to make sure that the owner knows that we're hiring this position at this rate. And also the hiring manager will have that information. Okay, so we went ahead and we got our job description. We went ahead and got our requisition form. We did our physical demands and analysis. Let's go ahead and put an ad together. And where do we post our ads? Indeed is a great resource to put it on. I believe they're reasonable. Monster as well. And remember, they have a lot of search engines. So you post it on one and you'll find it in many other search engines. Colleges are a great place for interns or for positions that you know they can learn on the job and you like that they have, a certain level of degree. And also don't forget EDD. EDD also is free and they will go ahead and post it on their board. So let's read the bad ad, okay? Hiring for a receptionist, looking for a smart, young candidate who could handle phones and look professional and must sit all day. The position of receptionist will require a friendly and happy personality. To all that enter our lobby, pay $15 an hour, please apply. Many things are red flags here, right? First of all, smart. That is so subjective. What I think is smart and what you think is smart is totally different in range. So that is not a good word that you would want to use. Also, young is discriminatory for those that are older, right? And we all know that federal and state over 40 is considered old. So that would discriminate the older workforce. You also want to think about how you're writing in the physical demands. Must sit all day, that's not even reasonable. Okay, this position will most likely, if you have a receptionist now, will support accounting or will support HR or marketing. So they're not always sitting and they have to get up and tidy the lobby or they have to do other things that's, remember, the other duties as required by supervisor. So let's look at what a good job description would look like. So ABC Technology has an immediate opening for a receptionist. That should be your template always. Your company has an opening for and then you would complete that. Job requirements is the ability to work with public, to greet our customers and our clients, and must answer incoming calls and be available to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Required experience of 2 years in an office environment. Doesn't say receptionist, it just says in an office environment. And good communication and typing skills is a plus. The range 15 to 18 because we're going to use some wiggle room if we do find that excellent candidate. You're going to send a resume to, and you would go ahead and enter your website or your email. And always remember that you're an equal employer opportunity because you're going to be fair. You're going to take a look at who's the best candidate. And remember to create filters if you do any type of online. These filters are wonderful. They weed out candidates that are totally unqualified and also that will save you time, excuse me, and that will save you time. Okay, so, oh dear, what happened? Oh, it clicked, I'm sorry. Let me get back there. It clicked ABC Company. Ooh, oh, okay, I'm so sorry, folks. So we're going to go ahead and now we're going to interview and prepare for our interviews. The first thing you want to do is, as you look at the resume, please don't look at it the same day you're going to interview. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes my hiring managers have done. They haven't had time to look at it. Just let me look at it really quick. Uh, it devalues your interest to the candidate, and if you admit it in front of them, oh my goodness, that's the worst thing you can do. So you'll want to take a look at the resume. Try and give it a day or two before. Be prepared. Highlight the areas that was of interest of this candidate. You could write on the resume. I always use a pencil or a pen. Always positive comments, okay? If not, don't put them down. But you do want to go ahead and make sure that you take notes and that you review this resume or application, excuse me. And then prepare prearranged interview questions. You know, maybe something has been, if you're in accounting, how well are you with journal entries, general ledgers? How well are you with Excel? Or, you know, let them answer their story. Let them explain to you what they've done. And you'll want to establish some sort of evaluation method, and you could use your own. Okay, not everybody has the same evaluation. Maybe for you, it's professionalism or appearance. Maybe it's the energy that they bring to the company, the creativity or the knowledge of the job. Also ask them if they looked at the website of the company's website. What did they think of it? Okay. Um, Review your federal and state laws. And I'm going to kind of role play this a little bit. You're only human. You want to know about the candidate, but you can't get personal and don't get personal. The gender, we never want to ask if they're male or female. It doesn't matter. The position is what matters and who holds that position. Their age, the only thing you could ask is if they are hired, could they show proof that they're over 18 years of age? You don't want to ask for their birth date. You don't want to ask for proof of age until after they're hired. Also, really big is the race. There's no need to ask for uh, what type of race they are, or you notice that there is um, an accent, you know, where are you from? No, 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 no. That has nothing to do with this position. So please stay away from these. These are very important. On the nationality, we can ask if they are hired, if they could show proof that they could work in the United States. But that's the only question. And quite honestly, it is in the application. So you wouldn't even want to ask that. You cannot ask if you're a US citizen or when did you become a citizen or where were you born or anything that's related to their ancestry. Also in their religion, it is fair to say if you could work on weekends because some religions hold the Sabbath, but you don't want to ask what church they go to or what is their religious holidays, or can they provide a recommendation from the church. So stay away from these questions. Don't even think of that when you're talking in your interview and you're trying to engage with the candidate. Okay. So we are going to interview now, and a lot of online and Zoom interviewing is happening right now. It's efficient. It allows for time so that we don't have to drive to and from different sites. So I would recommend the best practice during an interview is that hopefully it has been pre-screened and we've brought in our three best candidates that we feel would be good to interview. We could do that online as a panel, or we could do that in person. And you'll want to start with small talk, right? Did you find the location okay? Or how's your day been going? And beware of your body language. You don't want to come across like if you're the authoritative. So you're going to want to be sure that you're pleasant, that you're easygoing, that they're able to reach, you on a certain level to talk comfortably, and also listen to the interviewee before interrupting. Many times we just want to get out there and say if they could do A, B, C, D, but we need to listen to see what they have done and whether or not their personality would be a fit, if their knowledge is effective of communication, and how they can manage the position. And then towards the end of your interview, recap and get feedback, get their feedback. What do you think of the position so far? Do you like the company? Do you think this would be a place where you'd be happy to work at? And let them answer that. The other area that I'd like to talk about is confidential interviews. We've all had them. Maybe the company's going through a reorganization. So in the confidential interviews, you'll want to make sure that the candidate knows that it's a sensitive position that we're going to fill, whether it be new or a replacement, and to keep this confidential between me, the hiring manager, and the candidate. Okay. Now, if we go through a selection process, and if we're fortunate enough to find someone, we're going to want to make sure that we discuss about the qualifications within the hiring panel. This is outside of the candidate. We're going to want to know what special attributes they can bring, whether their personality would be a good fit, and we don't want the selection process to drag. That's the first thing to turn off on a candidate. It really is. They're anxious once they leave the interview. So if you know they're not going to work out, they're not going to be a good fit, then it's fine to call them or send them an email and saying that you're going to move forward with another candidate, with other candidates, and that you really appreciate their interest and time, and that you will hold on to their resume for 6 months. Okay, should something else come up. Um, at the flip side of that, if you do have a candidate that you were really comfortable with, that sounded like someone you really wanted to continue on the interviews, then let them know that. I'm not saying you have to do it right that day, but let them know that within a day or two so they know that they're in the running. Okay. So we hired someone. Yay, we've got someone and they're ready to start because we really need this position filled. So you're going to engage with the candidate until they are through that door. How are you going to do that? You're going to send out the offer letter and you're going to confirm their acceptance. And perhaps you have a template for an offer letter. If not, we could help you at CalWorks. Also, send out a new hire packet. I would do it via email because it saves time during the new hire orientation. And we'll talk about what the specific requirement documents are in a minute. Also, the ongoing communication during the period prior to their first day. We'll want to let them know that we're appreciative that they passed their drug screen, or that we have to do some references, but everything looks good and we look forward to seeing you. And when you do reference checking, nowadays they're only verifying dates and they're verifying titles. One of the things that companies are no longer doing and they've caught on to is if you ask if they have been if they voluntarily resigned or if they were involuntarily resigned. And we all know what that means if it's involuntary. Many companies won't even answer that anymore. It's a liability. And quite honestly, you just want to verify dates and titles, okay? And of course, you do not verify any wages. So let's do some communication. Let's inform IT that we have a new hire. and that we need the department and the email and certain software information that they might have or accessibility. You're going to want to notify your receptionist. You're going to want to let her or him know that we're going to greet, John on Monday, and please welcome her or him, and that they need to just call the hiring manager. Connect again with the candidate and let them know that you're excited that they're part of the team, and advise them that we ordered your business cards, that your office is refreshed or your cubicle, and also that their email has been set up. And a special touch that I've always liked to do was leave a swash of the company product. Maybe it's a pad or pencils, maybe it's a logo with a mug, but it's a nice touch for them to feel welcome. Okay, so they're walking through the door. Here they are. They're all yours. What I have always done with a new hire orientation is I've always given them a story about what the company is, how it started. This inspires people. And I think that it's very important. Don't leave this out. This is probably the most important thing that they will learn about the company, how it began, where. Some people start in a garage, maybe on the kitchen table, and that inspires people. Also, what are the mission statements of the company? What do they believe in? What are their commitments? What are their competencies? And then you'll want to give a guided tour of the company as well. Hopefully, they'll be able to meet the owner, the CEO, and the coworkers. I found this study from Harvard Business Review that I thought was very important, and I'd like to share that. Employers who do not take onboarding seriously risk losing the new employees that they spent so long trying to get in the door. And the average company loses 17% of its new hires during the first 3 months. That says a lot. It says that once that employee came in, they didn't feel valued, or they didn't feel appreciated, or maybe they just didn't feel that they were part of the company. So again, take this time. I would take a minimum of 2 hours. And it's important so that they understand what the business is like, and if they have any questions that they were too shy to ask during the interview. Choose a place that can allow privacy, right? You've got a lot of information that you're going to exchange back and forth, and they're going to have a lot of private information as well. And also use the checklist. There is a checklist that will guide you. There's a lot of forms. California requires many brochures. We have the handbook. So just as long as you stay within that checklist, you'll be fine. So let's take a look at a checklist right now. This is a basic checklist. Again, we have that available if you'd like. And on the left side are the required forms that you would usually do for payroll purposes and California federal regulations, state or federal regulations. And then on the right side, this is what California requires. And I'm not going to go specifically down each one because it would take too much time, but we definitely do want to highlight those that are very important, depending on whether or not it's male or female. But you do want the wage and employee notice, because that is a requirement, along with the paid family leave pamphlet and the sexual harassment pamphlet. That is a requirement in the state of California. Also, the right to victims and domestic violence and sexual assault and stalking notice. And you also want to provide the health insurance information or the health exchange. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But this is a checklist as a guide, as I was mentioning. The bottom half of this checklist shows more relevance to what your company requires. Perhaps there's keys, credit cards, uniform, parking pass. On the other, I would put any PPE, and I would also put any type of swipe badge, so that if they ever left the company, they would need to return the swipe badge. And what's very, very important here is the signature, and that's why I put a big black X box on it, because you need to make sure that the employee signs and understands everything that you went over. Again, you allow yourself time enough to do that, but you want to make sure that they understand that and that they sign it, and ask if there's any questions that they might have. At that same moment, it's a good idea for you to sign it as well. You'd be surprised how many times we go ahead and collect all this paperwork, go back to our desk, and we're called on something else. So we have to put out another fire and we fail to sign it. So it's a legal document. Make sure you sign it in front of them. Okay? Let's go over what's really important again on the required documentation. The I-9 is the document that verifies that an employee can work in the United States. The W-4 is an income tax withholding form so that you can give to payroll on how many exemptions they're going to claim. This should not be in your personnel file. The W-4s have always been a confidential file in a separate folder because it has their social security, their name, their address, and it's very important that you keep that aside. The social security card, you need to take a look at that. That should be something that should physically be presented to you because that exact name is what should go on payroll. Also, the health insurance exchange notice, it requires that all employers under FLSA to provide new hires with the 14 days of existence of the health exchange. And if you need one, just let us know and we could provide that for you at CalWorkSafety and HR. Also, the new hire reporting, all federal and state law require that you report the new hires, and that's usually done for a fee through your payroll company, okay? I want to spend some time on the employee handbook because many times we hand them the employee handbook and we assume they're going to read it. So let's make sure that they read the certain points that's important for you in the company. You hand deliver that, or you could email it as well if you want to do it electronically. And you'll want to make sure that they take the time to read it and you'll express that and they'll sign the receipt of the handbook. I would go over attendance policies, no matter what company you're with. Attendance is always an issue, whether they're late or they don't show or what have you. You'll want to make sure that they understand your attendance policy. I would also cover the leave policies, if they're eligible, ones that they are not eligible for. And that would include that paid family leave brochure. Also injuries, that they're to report any injury, no matter how insignificant they might think it is. It's also corrective action. It helps us to do things better and safer. Holiday schedule is very important to all of us, right? We want to know what companies honor which holidays. Vacation accrual, that could be a little tricky because some vacation accruals are written a bit complex. So you want to make sure that they understand what the vacation accrual is and if there's a waiting period before you accrue. Some companies hold the introduction period and the code of conduct. Nowadays, I think it's more important that we review the code of conduct, what is and what is not acceptable. And it also goes along the lines of any type of bullying and whether or not something like that should happen, that they know that they need to report it to their supervisor. Okay, so those are the main things for me that was important. Your list might be shorter, your list might be longer, but please keep that in mind to take the time to do that. And then you'll have them sign in front of you if they can, or if they're off-site, that they would go ahead and submit that page to you. So now that we've talked about all the good paperwork and we've talked about the onboarding process, we are also required to do the safety training and the guidelines. The training is going to be required through CalOSHA, whatever that would be, and you would let them know what the safety training would be. It could be a safety manager, or it could be their direct manager that would be doing the safety training. The emergency evacuation plan, I would go definitely to a map and I would show them where the evacuation is. So, Karen, you are here and this is where your route would be. So make sure that they know that they have different evacuation plans, and it should be throughout the company, not only in the office, a couple of them in the office, by the exits, by the clock-in machine in the warehouse. So that's something that should be on display and they need to know where to go. Make sure that they're aware that they have a right to see the STS, the safety data sheets. formerly known as the MSDS, whether it's online or whether there is a binder in the area and where it is available. Also the hazmat, what type of chemicals and the type of disposal. If this position is in a production position or in a warehouse, they'll need to know how to dispose of certain materials. And then we talk about the personal protective equipment. You'll want to make sure that you have for them safety glasses, if they need to wear steel-toed shoes, if there's specific footwear. Also, if there's any gloves that needs to be provided to them. And you'll want to talk about the illness and injury prevention plan. This is the program that states what a company does and how it does it. That's related to safety and work-related injuries, excuse me. Maybe there's certification that they have to do. So this would be an annual training that you would advise them of. If you are in the Food and Drug Administration, I'm sure there's regulations that you need to include in this point, and any SOPs, any standard operating positions that they need to do prior to start. There's others out there. There's ISO 9000, there's TARF, aviation compliance, foreign body production. These are extra training guides that I would need to prepare in advance depending on the position. You'd want to continue to refresh your training annually. There's different type of trainings that you would have out there for them. And perhaps the list gets longer, but it's a safe environment. And that's really what our goal is. Other onboard tips that I would use would be any videos, like an office ergonomic or forklift training. We also did the annual safety training calendar. We would have a consultant come out, not the fire department because it's too expensive, but we would have a consultant come out and literally put a fire out in our parking lot. And we would need to learn how to take out that fire. And good old Nora, I just started to shoot that and nothing would come out. And they kind of laughed and said, "You got to pull the pin." I didn't know that. I've never used a fire extinguisher before. So little details, right? Little details that might help save a life. I also like to go to the company website. If they haven't seen it, I like to show them the company website, maybe share any events that you do annually. Maybe it's a barbecue, a picnic, and then talk about your clients. Who are your clients? Did you know that Amazon is one of our main clients, or we also host to Disney? It's inspiring, it shows some quality in the work that you use, especially with big box companies. So we're already over the orientation. We're going to arrange lunch for the hiring manager. I don't know if you have a budget for this, but you could certainly bring in lunch and you could spend time with a colleague, the individual on their first day, and the hiring manager, and you can get acquainted with them and talk about the company and its common interests. And then at the end of the day, you're going to want to follow up. You're going to want to see how they feel about the company and how glad you are to have them on their team. You have other resources. We are here to help you. We're at CalWorkSafetyHR.com, and also we have our phone number that anything is available any of these documents are available for you, okay? So what I'd like to do is leave you with an inspiring quote. I'm going to tell you a little story. If you don't create a great, rewarding place for people to work, they won't do great work. That is Ari Weinswig. I don't know if you've heard of this gentleman, but he started by owning a restaurant that took him down the path of exhaustion, frustration, and ultimately failure. He started over by creating a community of businesses, each supporting the next. He stayed small and strategic, and he invested heavily in his team. Today, Ari Weinswig is a co-founder of Zingerman's in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and he built the stuff dreams are made of. Today, his business is worth $50 million. He invested in his team. Thank you very much. It has been my pleasure to give you this onboarding recruiting training and webinar. And if there's any questions, I would really like to try and answer those. Thank you.
Okay, so we do have one question. What is the timeline for sexual harassment training for new hires?
So sexual harassment training is an annual training for employees. So if you have new hires and you would like to get it all done in a certain amount of period, as long as you're within the 12 months, that's fine. I know some companies that make it part of their new hire orientation. After they're done with the paperwork, they will schedule a sexual harassment training. Personally, I think sooner the better.
Do we have any more questions? What is this a question? Show your contact information and documents available. Is that a question?
I'm sorry, the question is documents available? Yeah, if they leave us their email, we can definitely send them any type of documents that they need for the orientation. I'm not sure if there was a specific document that they needed.
All right. If we don't have, oh, your contact info.
Oh, mine, yeah, it's with CalWorkSafety, and I could just, it's N Gomez at CalWorkSafetyHR.com. I work with Dawn, Cindy, and Wendy as well. I'm part of the team. So if you don't remember that, just get a hold of Dawn or Cindy or Wendy. Yeah,
Well, thank you so much, Nora, for sharing. This is an important topic. And remember, if we didn't address your question today, go ahead and reach out to us. Be on the lookout for future topics on our website at CalWorkSafetyHR.com. If you are interested in getting a copy of the slides or the video presentation, go ahead and send us an email at info@calworksafetyhr.com. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe, healthy, and have a wonderful day. Oh, wait, we do have one more question.
oh, okay.
uh, for
That's
recent
fine.
for recent hires that are missing some of the docs, do you think it would be wise to update the employee files at this point?
Yes, if you're missing documentations, do a little audit and see what you're missing on there and let them know that you would need for them to complete it. Put it in a little packet. You know, it's happened to all of us. I've missed a form or two. I put in a little concealed envelope and let them know that they need to complete this as soon as possible. It was part of the new hire process and that they need to return it to HR. But yes, get those documents completed, please.
Great. Thank you so much, Nora. And again, everyone, have a wonderful day.
Thank you all.